not see any people or any traffic during that month until the end of the May, when all the traffic and the pedestrians replay itself. Although there is also another state of emergency announced yesterday, but we did not see any traffic of the population. But everybody is wearing masks and also protective equipment. But from the overlook of the streets and from the facial complexions of everybody, I feel that people, also the Japanese local people, are not have a very reactive response to the emergency status. In Tokyo, we could see that it is a very strict result for the COVID-19. At the end of last year, the Tokyo metropolitan circle has been reaching a real state of the emergencies. Before the new year, Japanese government has called on everybody to stay at home for the new year because Japan was celebrating the lunar calendar. Although the general public actually listens to the government's suggestion, but this year's New Year is a very quiet New Year, and nobody went back to their home for the New Year, and a lot of activities has been cancelled. For example, worshiping in the Shinja. But from the result, the calls from Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has not been effective. With the increasing numbers of the COVID-19 confirmed cases, new records was generated every day. On the 5th of January, the infected number across Japan has been reaching 4,500. By 5th, it has been reaching 6,000. Yesterday, by the 7th, the total confirmed cases has been reaching 7,500. That has demonstrated some of the explosive and exponential growth. Half of the confirmed cases is actually coming from the metropolitan circles, Tokyo capital and also the Chiba prefecture is accounted for 50% of the confirmed cases, especially for Tokyo. Yesterday, the confirmed cases is actually reaching 2,400 cases, accounting for 1/3 of the national number. So, as the Suga administration has seen this scenario, yesterday, Japanese Prime Minister Suga has announced a state of emergency. So, for these times of the state of emergency's announcement, it is closely related to the metropolitan circles in Tokyo. Apart from the infected numbers, another number that we can refer to is about the hospitals in Japan's metropolitan circles. And currently, the hospitals in the metropolitan areas has been taken in around really high numbers of the confirmed cases of COVID-19, and we believe all the ICU beds has been saturated for this COVID-19 pandemic. In the capital city of Tokyo, we believe around 5,000 people or at least 4,800 people has been demonstrated with symptoms for COVID-19, and they were being kept at home for further medical monitoring, but many of them is demonstrating a light or mild symptoms because of some of the mental or basic or underlying reasons. I believe that this population is going to progress their disease very rapidly. There is actually no single methods for the Japanese government to let this group of people to be entered or to be registered in the nearby hospital. So we believe the Japanese medical system is actually reaching the level of saturation, and that is quite alarming in terms of the nation, and especially happening in the Tokyo metropolitan areas. It is also suffering a lot. That is actually the scenario that we are briefing from the yesterday. And a vast number of the COVID-19 confirmed cases cannot be registered in the hospital or hospitalized. That is creating another secondary spread of the disease. They are only being monitored and controlled at their own home. So we cannot guarantee this spread of the disease. And actually, at the very beginning of this year, we are seeing the second wave who is hitting us. And we are also seeing some of the deteriorations of the symptoms, including demonstrations of the shortness of breath, and many patients need oxygen therapies, and the local Japanese government do need the intubation machines to help with the treatment, to smooth the treatment process. But actually, for the recent few days, especially for the Tokyo capital, that is actually the basic introductions for the Tokyo government, and the Japanese government, based on that scenario, has announced the state of the emergency to deal with the scenarios, and the Japanese government has also announced 8 different rules to tackle against this new rising wave of COVID-19. Starting from the yesterday, the Japanese population, the Japanese people believe the Suga administration has really published some of the useful policies. And the supportive ratios for the Suga administration has gone up. So after Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has got into the place, I believe that it is very important for the whole populations to observe the basic manners to tackle against COVID-19. We have also adopted many different measures to do that. And although that Mr. Suga has talked about the method about the go-to travel, to ban the go-to travel plans, and also giving some of the subsidies to that, but this is far from enough to lift the Japanese government from this emergency situation. So areas with a state of emergency should be carried out will be expanded from the 7 prefectures to all the prefectures. I believe Japan is an economy dominated by the tourism, so that's the reason why the whole country was greatly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Actually, the coronavirus has beaten deep into the world's largest economy. Under the current supplementary budget plans, the government has set aside funds for cash payouts of 300,000 yen, but only for households whose income is judged to have been hit by the coronavirus. This is a very new scenario, and we should also admire the state of emergency. This time, the state of the emergency is going to last for 1 month. So according to this trend, it's also related to the judgment by the administration, by the Suga administration. And we could also see the Suga administration supportive ratio has been rising quite rapidly. And currently, the supportive ratio for the Suga administration has been reaching around 70%. We believe that after a proper control of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Japanese Prime Minister Suga is also going to see an uprising of the supportive ratios. According to one of the major events last December, we believe that Mr. Suga is also going to win the supportive ratios from 38% to the 70% right now. And Japanese Suga administrations also hope to reform the healthcare systems. And after the state of the emergencies and behind the announcement of the state of the emergencies, Mr. Suga also told the press that as soon as the virus is settled down, they need to examine the organizational structure of the ministry. And for the different restaurants and dining places, they also going to provide them a timely dinner to sustain their operation. This has been very effective measures to control the COVID-19 pandemic. Sometimes the Suga administration has also required to stop the providing for some of the dining facilities. This has been working really fast to help the local restaurants to resume their operations. We could see the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected the fine operations of the restaurant industry and also the dining industry. Even if we are actually communicating, and also the Suga government was trying to communicating the rules, but according to the status across the year, some of the restaurants cannot continue their operations. We believe there are around 800 restaurant dinners, and also there are around 800 restaurants cannot keep their operation. One major measures that we have been taken up this time is toward the restaurant and also restaurant owners. I've been talking to the restaurant owners. They told me that even if the government has supported them in a cash subsidies, even if they agree to support this state of emergency for the duration of 1 month, but the government is willing to provide the subsidy with around 600,000 subsidy every day, an equivalent to 3,000 RMB per day. But the restaurant owners still believe that it cannot match up with the losses that they are meeting up with. According to the statistics of The Economist, for this time, state of emergency, the dining restaurants has been affected, and the total loss of the economy could be around 4 trillion Japanese yen. From that, we could see these measures is actually affecting the Japanese capital and also the Japanese populations. Apart from this restaurant and the dining industry, it also affects the shopping malls and also the gyms, among other different public operating areas, and also the game center. All of it is required to close the door before 8 p.m. for other public areas because the government has not calling on a nationwide effort, but it also advises these public places to close its door before 8 p.m. Another part is that the people should reduce their trips during night, and for these times of the state of the emergencies, the general public, the government is actually calling for the night trips made by the general public during the night. But according to what we have observed on the Shibuya area today, the pedestrian traffic has not been reduced and it's not being affected by the state of emergency. You can see right here behind me, the Tokyo is actually entering into its nights, but we still see a flow of the populations. According to the research and surveys of the Japanese government, for the really developed areas in Tokyo, including the Shibuyas and also among other different CBDs, we could see that there is no uprisings of the populations, although the Japanese government has announced the state of the emergencies, but they did not control the total populations because the Suga administration actually lack the legal support to keep up with the compulsory reasons. During the long last year, the Japanese government has not adopted a legally based measures to enable the government to keep up with some of the restrictive measures to contain the outdoor activities for this part of the population. We could see that even for this time of the state of the emergency, even if the government has calling on everybody not to go outside after 8 p.m., but this is only a suggestive measure, not a compulsive measure. That's the reason why we still need to observe the efficacies for these times measures. Another important measure is that the government is actually putting forward the ideas about remote office, like working in turns to go to the workplace. In the different workplaces and also in the different work areas, the total work density should be reduced to 70% or 60% of the previous workforce. Another important requirement is that it has also put the limitations on the organizations of many different activities. For some of the exhibitions, art shows, it has a requirement, that is to say, to limit the population, the visiting population, to around 50%. And its maximum should be less than 5,000. For one game or for one sports game or for one entertaining events, the total attending population should less than 5,000. According to the COVID-19, the target is relatively quite relaxed, considering what is happening in Tokyo. But actually, the experts required the Japanese administration to cancel these kind of restrictions. So for these measures, the strictness all the time has not reached a very effective result as what happened in April last year. In April last year, apart from the restaurant industries, the middle schools and also the primary schools has suspended their operations, and also for the small and medium-sized enterprises has closed their operations. It worked in last April, but for these times of the state of emergency, for the measures we have published this time, it is more relaxed compared with what was happening in April. And the outdoor activity has only been limited after 8 p.m. That is not a very long time length, and it also has put some of the requirements at daytime, and the duration is only around 1 month. The Japanese government has also put a target that if after 1 month, if the daily increase case can be controlled below 500 cases, then the target is hit, and we are also going to cancel the state of emergency. But according to many different experts,